Did you know that in fiscal year 2022, volunteers saved taxpayers over $277,000? Welcome back to the My Rowlett podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Rabelais, and today I am chatting with your Mayor Pro Tem, Jeff Winget, and we're going to talk about volunteering in the city of Rowlett. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Hannah. Appreciate you having me today.
So excited. I mean, you are the definition of what it could look like to volunteer in Rowlett. So you are a very busy man. So I really appreciate you taking the time away from work, potentially your family, your other civic duties that you do, just to spend a couple minutes just encouraging and inspiring, hopefully, others to also get involved in their city.
Well, thank you. I'm really glad to be here today.
Wonderful. So I think my first question is, I would love to start this show by if you could share who you are and what your role is in the city.
All right. So again, my name is Jeff, and I have been on City Council since May of 2022, served as Mayor Pro Tem during that time. That is a council appointed position.
What is Mayor Pro Tem? Like, what does that really mean in like English terms?
So it's Latin for mayor for a time.
Okay.
Which basically I'm the Robin to the mayor's Batman, if you will. That's kind of how I relate it.
I love that.
In the event that he can't be there for an event or for a meeting, I step in and fulfill those duties as needed.
So what does volunteering mean to you personally?
So for me, volunteering is something that I think we're all called to do in a way. It's definitely a calling. And it's just a form of service to reach out into the community to help support your neighborhoods, the community as a whole, your county, your state. I mean, anywhere that you can plug in schools, in your church. There's so many opportunities out there, and there's so much need across the board where you can plug in. And if you have the time and you have the talent and you have the ability, I would definitely encourage people to get involved and volunteer as much as they can.
And how did you first get involved in volunteering with the city of Rowlett?
So we moved to Rowlett in 2014, and
Okay.
when I moved here, I made a commitment to myself that I was going to volunteer in 3 different areas. The first was my church, where I was already a volunteer, and it was a church that was here locally. But we moved from Arlington, and that was a long drive, so
Wow,
I
yeah.
had a lot more opportunity when we moved here to be able to kind of step up and do some of the things that needed to be done around the church. The second one was in my kids' school. So when we moved here, my oldest daughter was just starting first grade, and we have 4 kids. So they've all kind of gone through the Garland Independent School District. And just to be able to step into a role in PTA and just kind of be inside the school, helping out, being a good influence on these kids, being a good role model, and kind of helping support not only the kids, but also the staff and faculty of the school is really important as well. So to step into that role as well. And then the third was to get involved in my city in some way. And so when I moved here, I kind of just started looking around, started kind of perusing the city's website to see what opportunities there were out there.
Great.
And
what did you type in the city's website? I'm just so curious.
It was just
volunteer.
Honestly, it was just Google and just a little bit of Google foo to just kind of find my way in. And once I landed on the boards and commissions page, I started to look through all the opportunities they had and just kind of started to identify, okay, these are areas where I might want to plug in. And I identified a couple areas, one of those being the Arts and Humanities Commission. And I said, well, I'm into, I play violin, I'm kind of into music, I'm into, creative arts and things like that. Let me see what this is all about. And I really had no idea what I was getting into at the time, but got plugged in, applied, interviewed with Mayor Gattell at the time in the city council. And, I stepped into that interview and he said, what do you foresee for the cultural arts and the arts and humanities in Rowlett? And my answer to that, not knowing any better, was I want to see a cultural arts center here. I want to see something great.
Yeah.
Because I came from Mesquite originally. That's where I grew up.
Gotcha.
And we had the Mesquite Arts Center. And so I envisioned something very similar for Rowlett. And he said, well, our budget's not quite up to par for that. At the time, I think we had like a $4,000 operating budget.
Wow.
Yeah, so not exactly at the level of being able to build. Yes. So at that point, it was just leaning in, kind of understanding what the commission does, all of the contests and grants and things that they put on and sponsor throughout the year. And that has grown so much since I was on the commission. I joined, like I said, in 2015, I believe, was on there 5 or 6 years. And during that time, we started developing additional contests. We started the Rowlett Sings competition.
Which is Saturday. Oh, I guess we'll get this podcast will be released later, but which will have happened already that when you're hearing this.
And they can watch it on YouTube.
They could watch it on YouTube. Yes, that is right. Thank you, Drew.
And it was just a new way to kind of open the door for the arts in Rowlett to be a part of kind of everyday life and what we were doing. In addition to that, we worked on capital art projects, so some big art pieces around the city. We had a very generous donation from one of our residents, Tamara Williams. She donated a couple art pieces to the city, and that kind of fostered that art program. So if you're driving by Fire Station 2 or Fire Station 4 and you see the either tangerine or blue-colored art pieces that are there, you will know that those were what really launched our art program to be something great. So obviously very grateful to her. It was a special time. And then from there, just continued to get involved, continued to plug into what was going on, kind of started coming to city council meetings periodically. And although that's not necessarily a volunteer type role, I considered myself like a representative for, my neighborhood, my community of what our wants and needs were, and just listening to what was going on and kind of just, again, getting plugged in. And so in 2017, I ran for city council, but didn't win. But that was a huge period of growth for me because for me, I'm a bit of an introvert, and to come out of my shell.
Really?
I know that may not seem that way.
Would not guess that. Wow.
Definitely an introvert. Things like this and things like standing up in front of people, very out of character for me. So it's just an interesting little tidbit that most people probably don't know. A little bit of an introvert. So yeah.
Wow. And you do so, you like are out everywhere. So do you just go home and recharge? And
pretty much, yes. Go home, play video games, hang out with my kids, and recharge.
Yeah, recharge.
Yeah. So from there, just continued to stay involved. I was chair of the Arts and Humanities Commission for a few years, and we continued to do great things. And for me, that was a really great volunteer opportunity. And the great thing about when I ran for city council was I never had to give that up. Our charter allows people who are on boards and commissions to run for political office and not have to give up their position until they're elected. So
that's great.
Yes, really, really good benefit of being in that role. Just continued to volunteer in that way.
How would you describe what a board and commission is to the lay person who has no idea how city government structure, like why would someone want to even join one of those? So what is it and why would someone even want to join?
Absolutely. So for me, my perspective is it's similar to what city council is to like the county or the state level. So city council is your local representation. Your boards and commissions are even more specialized local representation of what different facets of the city want to see with our community. So the different commissions that we have represent things like the animal shelter and the golf course that we have here. They represent things like the arts and humanities. So these different facets of the city that are represented through different groups or different bodies are all kind of encapsulated in these different boards and commissions.
Gotcha.
If someone has an interest in a particular area of the city like that, if you're a big animal advocate, definitely encourage you to get involved with the Animal Shelter Advisory Board, because that board is going to best represent the needs of the animal shelter and the animal community within our city. And those who rescue animals and foster animals and all of that, that's where you can get plugged in and kind of help advocate for that aspect of the city.
Gotcha.
Likewise, if you're a big golfer and you are wanting our golf course to be the best golf course in this side of the Mississippi, then you need to be on the Golf Advisory Board, where you can kind of continue to advocate for the course, for the clubhouse, for the neighborhood around there to make that golf course the best that it can be. So all of those opportunities kind of help plug in into what the city council does in making decisions through the budget process and throughout the year.
And I'm curious as your perspective as a council member. So what is it like to hear, now you're on the other side, you are in that seat. How is it to hear these groups advocate for their issues? Like, how do you take that on? How do you take that information and use that in y'all's decision making, I guess?
Well, the biggest part for me is we have to listen. Absolutely have to listen. And, we have a work session that we undergo with each one of those boards and commissions throughout the year. And so we're constantly kind of holding our ear to the ground to figure out what the needs are, what areas need the most impact from, a budgetary standpoint. But the other part is to strongly consider what those people need. So when we're making a decision that might have to do with an animal ordinance, we need to be sure that the Animal Shelter Advisory Board is consulted to be sure that plugs into, and it aligns with kind of their mission and their role and what they want to see, their vision for the animal shelter. Now, ultimately, City Council does have final say, but we need all of that buy-in. We need all of that buy-in from every stakeholder that we can find, because we never want to be in a position where we're making decisions in a vacuum.
Right. Excellent. And then how many hours do you think that you spent being on the commission, the Arts and Humanities Commission? Like, what was the time that you had to allot for that position?
That's a great question. It's not actually a lot. There's times during the year when we're running a particular contest that I might be on that standing committee. I might be responsible more for the operation of that contest. But aside from that, you might be talking, 3-4 hours a month. It's not, It's not a huge commitment, right?
1 hour a week, maybe.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Did you hear that, folks? It's only 1 hour a week. If Jeff can do it with 4 kids and has us all other volunteer priorities, you can do it too.
Totally. And it's a lot of fun, because it's something that you're already passionate about. Even if you don't like where you work and you're like, man, my job is terrible, but you come home and you've got a great volunteer opportunity that you can plug into, that you have a passion for, you can find happiness there. Absolutely.
Yeah. And what would you say to young people wanting to get involved? Because I feel like when you look at some of the board and commissions, I love, seniors in our community. Most of them are retired, maybe have a little bit more time to give. And I think that for me, I see that as maybe a barrier to entry for someone young. Because when I look and I'm like, well, I'm not really represented. Well, the city even consider me since I'm young and I don't have as much experience as some people already sitting on the commission? What would you say to young folks who maybe are kind of seeing those barriers of entry to participating in a board or commission volunteer role?
Well, first of all, I definitely commiserate with that perspective, because it is tough when you're young and you have kids and you're just trying to scrape by. It is difficult to have any extra give at the end of the day. So I totally commiserate with that. We have younger people that are volunteers on all of our boards and commissions.
Great.
So there are people well represented, I think, kind of across the board. And an interesting fact also is that we actually have a youth advisory council here in Rowlett.
That's right. Yes. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah. So we have a group of high school age kids that attend schools all around the area. Interestingly, not Rowlett High School. We don't have any representation from there, but we have representation from schools like Bishop Lynch and even Royce City High School.
Wow.
Rockwall Heath High School, I believe, Lakeview, Garland, North Garland. So we have representation of Rowlett residents that go to all these different schools, but it's our youth community. And so they know in particular what our youth are really looking for.
Gotcha.
With different needs throughout the city. So they're providing advice and guidance, but they're also doing that extra volunteer level. So our Youth Advisory Council in particular runs a couple canned food drives every year. So just another great way that they're plugging in and opening up doors that might not otherwise be opened.
Right.
They also run a voter registration drive. So they've done 2 of those. And that's another great way for them to get out into the community, be very present in what's going on, raise awareness that they exist, and let people know that we are representing our youth here in the community, and it's not just a bunch of people with gray hair that are making all the decisions, right? So there are a wide range, a wide diverse group of people that are helping provide input and make decisions in the city.
Thank you for that reminder. So there is literally something for everyone. Whatever interests you, like yours is arts and violin and music, so arts and humanities. What else do we have? I think we have a list of the different boards and commissions.
There's several, so you really have to kind of find out where you want to be plugged in. But you can look at, I mentioned the Animal Shelter Advisory Board, I mentioned the Arts and Humanities Commission. I'm going to go through boards that are more specific to different areas. The next one is the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Commission, so the RDEIC. And that's a great commission to kind of solicit feedback from different aspects of the community across the board. So the diverse makeup of Rowlett, kind of pulling that all together and ensuring everyone is represented. The Golf Advisory Board I also made mention to, that helps represent Waterview Golf Club. The Library Advisory Board's one I didn't even mention, but we have a group that provides advisory services to the library. In addition, we have the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, so another great board that talks about what we want our parks to be, what we want our parks to look like, what amenities we want them to have, those types of things. The Senior Advisory Board. So I mentioned the Youth Advisory Council. Now we've got the Senior Advisory Board. So kind of representing what our senior needs are within the community. And that could be anything from transportation to mobility to what we need at the community center. So kind of across the board, ensuring that everyone has a way to have their voice heard. That's what it's all about. And then you have boards that are state mandated, like the Planning and Zoning Commission. Interestingly, that is a state mandated commission that we have to have. They make recommendations based on zoning cases. And additionally, the Board of Adjustment. So Board of Adjustment is there to hear appeals after a case is heard by Planning and Zoning and City Council. So if there's a zoning case that needs appeal, it would go to the Board of Adjustment. Aside from that, we have the Economic Development Advisory Board. That's a great board that hears things like economic incentives and new businesses that might be coming to town, can make recommendations to those groups or those boards or those businesses, and to help refine kind of what we want the makeup of Rowlett to be long-term from a commerce standpoint. So really good board. It's made up of a wide variety of people, not only residents, but members of our Chamber of Commerce, members of our economic development team, members of our city council sit on that board. So it's a makeup of different representation from around the city to really help refine what business needs we have. And I think that's about it. There's one more that's listed, which is the COAD, which is Community Organizations Active in Disaster. And so this was formed, I believe, shortly after COVID, maybe even before that. And the purpose of it was really to bring together all the nonprofits and kind of focus our efforts when there's a disaster. Instead of kind of having, this church is trying to do this and this nonprofit's trying to do this, let's really focus those efforts into one direction so that we're all rowing the ship in the same way. You know what I mean?
Right.
So when we're collecting resources and we're providing space for people to, if they need a space to stay, to keep warm or to keep cool or whatever it may be, we're all doing that with the same mission in mind and not, we don't have these pop-up things of different things around the city.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about civic groups in the city of Rowlett. I'm curious what your perspective is as being on council and how we interact as a city with these organizations. But from your perspective, how important are these civic groups that we have in our community on the impact on our community, the impact of the nonprofits that have on our community and our city in general?
So I cannot overstate this enough. They are vital organizations to what's going on in the city. The city simply doesn't have the resources to do everything that these organizations are doing all by ourselves. It's just not possible. So when you talk about organizations like Keep Rowlett Beautiful that are doing lakeshore cleanup, they're hosting shredding events, they're hosting Earth Day events. These are all events and activities that the city needs. It's a huge benefit to our residents, but things that we could not do on our own. In addition, receiving the funding to carry out that mission requires specialized knowledge and specialized grant writing and things like that. So when that group or any of those groups is going out and applying for funding from a state and a federal level, those are resources that we don't necessarily have within the city to be able to apply for. So they can go out, they can seek that funding, and then they can carry out the mission that they are tasked to do. We also have a couple food pantries in the city. So we have Life Message, which is our bigger food pantry over on Rowlett Road, and also operates a thrift shop, and that's part of the funding that they, kind of self-generate.
Right.
But we have another food pantry that's operated out of First Christian Church called Hope in Hand Food Pantry. And the operators of this food pantry are really just individuals from around the city and even outside the city. The two people that I work closely with and volunteering with that food pantry actually live up in, I believe, Wiley.
Really?
So
oh, wow.
They are down here making sure that this food pantry is functional and working, and partnering with other food pantries in the area like Five Loaves in Saxe,
Gotcha.
Different things like that. North Texas Food Bank, partnering with different grocery stores to make sure that they're bringing in the food. So it's building those networks and those relationships. That's something the city can't do all by itself. It takes a special group of people with big hearts to be able to carry out that type of mission. And if anyone is interested in volunteering in those types of areas, definitely reach out. I would be glad to hook you up and get you plugged into the right place.
Yes.
When I think about other organizations that we have in the city, we also have, I mentioned the Library Advisory Board, but we also have the Friends of the Library, which is a separate nonprofit organization that helps support what the library is doing in their mission.
Fun.
Yeah,
Cool.
So another group. From the public safety standpoint, we have VIPS, which is volunteering in police service or volunteers in police service. And this group of volunteers does a wide variety of things.
So many things.
So many things.
Just watching them out there, they do the stuff that no one really wants to do. honestly. Getting gas, washing the car.
Right. You
Yeah.
know, there's some fun anecdotes that go along with that too, because anytime you get to drive a police car, you notice that traffic around you tends to change a little bit.
Sure.
So there's a lot of fun anecdotes about that. And then in addition, the Community Emergency Response Team, which is CERT,
Yes.
and really, really vital organization to the city when it comes to responding to a disaster. You know, the things that they do on kind of a more frequent basis are going to be things like line searches, and we're going to be going out to different areas where other agencies might need help. But here within the city, to know that we have a group of volunteers that can respond in the event of an emergency, can take care of taking care of our police and firefighters that might need relief when they're responding to a scene, things like that. Just having that group of volunteers is so valuable. It really can't be overstated. And these are people who they just love doing that. They
Yes.
love doing that type of work. And again, it's all about passion. So if you're driven by that and you're passionate about those types of things, definitely encourage you to get plugged in.
Especially because they also provide training. So maybe if you have a passion and don't know where to start, they offer weekend trainings. I wish I knew. We'll put in the show notes when their next training is, but they do it twice a year. So this is a great resource, just even know how to prepare your own self for an emergency response, but also your community. So great resource. Love what they do. Who else do we have? Oh yeah, FRAS. Do you want to talk about Friends of the Rowlett Animals?
Oh goodness, I couldn't forget them. FRAS, yes. So Friends of Rowlett Animals is a great organization, and literally our animal shelter could not keep the live release rate that we have without the Friends of Rowlett Animals, because so many animals are fostered by this organization and they're housed and kept for long periods of time. I say foster, and typically when you think of foster, you might think, oh, a week or two. Some of these people have animals for months. Because
maybe even a year
exactly,
sometimes. Long time.
And it's just because we don't have a choice. We don't have the space at our current animal shelter. I believe we only have 18 kennels that are inside. The number of outside kennels fluctuates depending on the weather,
Right.
from a shade standpoint, from a mud standpoint. All of those things impact the ability to keep the animals outside. And of course, it's Texas, so the heat. You can't keep
Yep.
animals out in the heat that long. So making sure that we have a place that those animals can go is vital. And this group is there all the time, literally
time.
at the shelter almost every day, volunteering, taking dogs for a walk, taking
Which
cats
is
out of their kennels,
huge.
giving
If
them
you
attention.
love dogs,
Absolutely.
just take them on a walk.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's an easier barrier of entry in my opinion, and such a huge need. And maybe takes 20 minutes. So even if you're on your way home, 20 minutes just taking a dog for a walk, huge impact.
That's right. If you're a work from home type person and you want to spend your lunch hour at the animal shelter, they would be glad to have you.
I love that idea. So we are referencing right now the civic groups list that is listed in the May Mayor Spotlight newsletters. Definitely check that out to get a full list, and all of their websites, all of their Facebook pages are listed in this handy dandy newsletter. So check that out to learn more about the different civics groups. And these are just barely scratching the surface. There's so many nonprofits and organizations that do so much in our city. So a simple Google search,
Yeah, that's the way. Getting an awareness of what's going on in your community is so vital. And for me, that's where it kind of all started. I wanted to know what was going on in my kids' school, and I wanted to plug into that. I wanted to ensure I was really plugged into our church, and I wanted to know what was going on in my community, and ensuring that I was, playing a role in that I was playing a part in that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's our obligation, right? It's
Right.
all of our obligations to ensure that we're connecting with our neighbors, with our community, with our city. Just makes everything better. If we kind of know what's going on, we can help understand each other's opinions, perspectives, what they're going through.
Right.
It builds our empathy. There's so many things, more than I can possibly list,
Yes.
that just the benefits of volunteering and being in service, in action out in your community.
So what were some of the resources that you use to keep in touch with the city? Did you search out newsletters that we had, or how did you receive information when you first moved here?
So I'll be really frank. When I first moved here, I felt like the city was really lacking in communication. And it was tough. It was really tough to find information. The website was a little clunky, and there weren't really all the newsletters that we have now. At the time, we did have a video that Mayor Gattell produced with our city manager, Brian Funderburk, which was really fun. It was very cheesy, corny type video, which was a lot of fun to watch. But there wasn't much more than that. And unless you took the time to sit through one of those videos, it was very hard to find kind of more targeted information.
Gotcha.
And so one of my big priorities that I ran for in 2017 was really being the voice of the people and kind of connecting people back to their community. And I advocated for a lot of things throughout that process. And I noticed after I ran that the city really started to step up its game. Social media accounts started really being formed and used on a more consistent basis. The newsletters started going out on a more consistent basis. And the information just became much more front-facing. So instead of a resident having to like dig to find things, it was more like, here's the information. It's kind of in your face. You know, that kind of pushing information out versus trying to get people to dive in is kind of, you know, what my frustration was. And I was so happy to see that, if nothing else, I hope I had at least some impact in making that happen. And, you know, now there's tons of resources, great resources. Obviously the Friday at 5 that you do, this podcast is revolutionary for our city. It's not something that existed before. All of the newsletters that go out, the Mayor's Spotlight, you know, the Friday at 5 is available not only as a video, but also as a document as well. So
and a podcast,
and
y'all.
A podcast.
You will know what's going on. If you just, whatever you want, we have,
That's
I feel
right.
like.
That's right. And we have a team that's making sure that that's happening now. And that's critical. That's key. And not just a team, but a team of really talented people from my perspective.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. You know, brag on you a little bit.
Yes. Also Drew.
Absolutely. Drew's great. And, you know, Denise and, you know, the work that she does. And now that we have a PIO with our police department, a public information officer, for anyone that might not know, a PIO, that's vital to pushing out information in times of an emergency or a crisis or anything like that. Having someone that's dedicated to putting out a press release, and it's not an afterthought of a detective who's trying to do investigative research and things like that. So all of these resources that we have now to help push information out to residents. Now, that being said, if you're a resident, you do still have to, you know, be on the lookout. You
still have to follow us. You still have to turn on notifications. That's what I'm like, you know, we have it. I almost sometimes feel like we have so much information, but yeah, you have to meet us halfway.
Absolutely.
For sure. So hopefully you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, all the things to stay up. We do post a lot. So
we do, and it's good information. And you'll find a lot of your city council members out there that are posting on a pretty consistent basis. You'll see your mayor out there posting on a very consistent basis of information that's going on, and it's kind of all across the board. You know, our mayor, Mayor Margolis, he posts a lot about, you know, traffic incidents. And, hey, this thing is happening with our fire department, and hey, you know, we've just had this crime incident or whatever. And it's just across the board. So if you follow these different people that are within the city and follow the city's social media pages, you can definitely stay plugged into what's going on.
What do you, because you also have a council mayor pro tem page yourself, what do you like to focus on posting?
So I try to be as transparent as possible with what the council's doing. So whenever we have a council meeting, I'm trying to put out a copy of the agenda so people are aware, hey, things are happening. This is what's going on, what you can expect to see. But also I like some of the feel-good stuff because there's so much negativity in the news, unfortunately. I really like some of that feel-good stuff that you can kind of say, hey, I'm proud of my city. You know, one of my big things was to get Rowlett out of the news for all the wrong reasons. We have been in the news over the past few years for a lot of different things where you just kind of either do a face palm or shake your head or, you know, it's just like, yeah, that's Rowlett for you.
Yeah.
I want to get us out of that kind of news, and I want to be recognized for doing great things here. And what was really cool for me was a couple weeks ago, Judge Kilgore, who's our chief judge here in the city, he got recognized by, I believe it was Channel 8. WFAA.
Yes, he did.
For the work that he was doing with the Veteran Redirection Program. So, you know, things like that, those are the types of stories that I want us to be on the cutting edge of, like, doing the next great thing for DFW and not being embarrassed for mistakes that were made or shortfalls that we had or anything like that. I mean,
people don't even know where we are.
That's right.
Like, someone's like, where's Rowlett? I'm like, we're in Dallas County. Or we're in both Rockville and Dallas County, but yes.
Yes, exactly. So it's great. You know, having that connection to my constituents, the people that are following me on Facebook, is just a great way for me to kind of keep my ear to the ground a little bit.
Right.
We have a couple Facebook groups here in the community as well where people can get pretty vocal, and that helps us really pay attention to what's going on because, you know, a lot of people don't know where to go to solve a problem.
Right.
They're leaning into social media to do that, and they see, oh, the Rowlett, Texas Facebook page. not realizing that it's a group that they're following, and it's just a group of citizen volunteers or citizens that have volunteered to administer this page. It has nothing to do.
You are one of them, so another act of service for the city.
But it has nothing to do with the city government itself or any of the departments within the city. And so I try to kind of connect the dots and say, okay, I see you're having an issue. Let's address that. Let's get plugged into how we can solve that problem, get you to the right place. So the city has an action center that people can call, they can email. There's a website where you can submit requests. So even as something as simple as I've got a pothole in front of my house, you can go on the Action Center website, you can submit that information, and hopefully get Public Works out there to get that patched.
Yes.
So all those resources exist. It's just getting people into the right place.
Well, if you're interested in applying, because you have to apply to be on a border commission, I believe those applications open up sometime in June. We will definitely share that stuff in the show notes. And then council and the mayor, I believe, then make a decision on who actually gets approved to be on that border commission, correct?
We do. And so typically there's several openings. People, as they kind of grow and things change in life, they either decide they don't want to be on a commission, or they don't have the time for it, or they can't make the commitment, or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have these openings that come about, and through those openings, we get people to sign up. It's an application process similar to what you would do applying for a job. Little less detail, but we like to ask you things about, why is this a passion for you? What background do you have in this field that you're applying for? And you do come in and you interview with the city council. And we had a really good problem to have last year, which was that we had more volunteers than we had slots. And so, yes, definitely.
Go Rowlett.
Yes. And so I'm hoping that we'll have the same thing this year. And although it is unfortunate to have to tell anybody, I'm sorry we don't have room for you, we're going to do everything we can to get you plugged into the right place within the city. Because, again, boards and commissions are just one facet of the volunteerism that we have between all the nonprofits and all the other avenues that you have to be a servant within your community.
And that website is rowlett.com/serve. To learn more about that program.
Perfect. I'm glad you know that, because I don't.
I peeked, and it's also on my little screen over here.
Nice.
And then, if you want to learn about additional volunteer opportunities, rowlett.com/volunteer is the resource there. So if people want to stay connected with you or to reach out to you, what is the best way to do that?
So you can always email me. My email is jwinget, WINGET, @rowlett.com. That's probably the best way. You can find me on social media at Facebook, and I don't know what my handle is. It's Jeff Winget, Rowlett City Council Place 2. If you search, you'll probably find me. You'll probably find me. You can also, find my personal page there as well. I do have a Twitter, but I'm not much of a twit, so I don't do much tweeting. So primarily email is the best way to get a hold of me. And I'm very responsive to email. Try to get back within at least 24 hours.
You are very responsive, so thank you. Another prime example why you're the best volunteer.
Well,
not volunteer, but volunteer at the same time. Awesome. So anything else?
I don't think so. I think that's about it.
That's it. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of the My Rowlett podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform so you don't miss an episode. And if you have any questions or would like to submit a topic, please email us at podcast@rowlett.com or tag us on social media using the hashtag MyRowlett. See you later.